Going on, everybody? This is Brendan Hauser with EVOQ Bikes. So we got one. Really excited to walk through the Masters National weekend with you and talking about the races, but hopefully some things that you can apply that I've learned. I learned a lot this weekend or last weekend that you can apply to your upcoming races. So this part of the YouTube channel and the podcast is an amateur cyclist talking mainly to other amateur cyclists. I'm definitely humbled by those of you who are pros who have reached out to us on Instagram and those who are doing the podcast interviews. If you want to hear more from pros, world tour athletes, other coaches, nutritionists, shout out to Ellen. That episode crushed so many. We're going to do another one. That was awesome. Check out those. These are where I talk about my own training and racing, my athletes training and racing, other people that email me. And so sometimes we call this bike radio. This is the Masters Nationals edition that just happened in Augusta, Georgia, and went into the road race in the crit. So what we're going to talk through in this episode, the week leading up to the road race, and especially some things the few days beforehand. The race overview, there's not a ton to talk about. It came down to a finish, and I'll explain what I think I screwed up and what went wrong for me, and hopefully you can learn that and apply it to your own racing. And then it was a lot of things actually in the 12 hours between not doing so well in the road race and moving into the crit. And I think I learned a lot in that time period. So hopefully this will help you. Then talking about the crit, food in the morning, the confidence and the self-talk after catching an L the day before. There was a lot that went through this. And then actually this, I'm trying to decide if I want to put this in this video or make it a video on its own. I might just gloss over it. When we're looking at our training zones, you're like, wait, training zones, this is super boring. I noticed earlier this year, I usually used to use 6 zones for a lot. And I really am now starting to think 7 zones is necessary when looking and analyzing a race file and applying that to our training. And I'm probably going to make this a video on its own, but we'll talk about it quickly. And then, some other tidbits in between. So I love these weekends. The camaraderie of a nationals type weekend, especially in the Masters community. I don't know what it is. It's, I just think that there's something about racers that all come together from around the country and are here for one reason. We all want to try and get this jersey. And, I think that's one thing that I screwed up in my earlier years of going to a lot of races as an amateur, and you're around other riders that, there's that intimidation factor. I was really quiet and shy. And I think if I could change one thing about my racing beforehand was just saying what's up to people more often. I was so intimidated by other riders that looked faster, that were faster. I think in even trying to build up our podcast here, I am more willing to put myself out there and just be like, yo, what's up? Even now, you go to the start line and there's 50 guys trying to get a jersey and you're trying to focus on your racing. I'm saying all of this you're going to make so many amazing friendships and you're crossing paths with so many people. Like, just say what's up to them. And even at the start line of the road race, I saw Donald Brew. We hadn't seen each other in 6 years, but I looked over and that was one of the guys that when I went to that race in 2017, people said, don't sprint Donald because you're going to lose. And so I looked over, I was like, yo, what's up, man? He's like, yo, been 6 years. I was like, yo, and so we've just been chopping it up. And I could have easily then been like, oh man, that's that dude. That's that fast guy. Like, just, be shy. Don't say anything. So say what's up to people. The week leading up to this race, I thought of the Stephen Bassett podcast. And I think about this very often when he just said, people talk about, oh, the stars all align and I got this win. Like everything was perfect. And he's like, no, that does not happen. A lot of times the person that wins is the one who just has the least amount of bad things happen to them. Meaning the week leading up for me was not ideal. And I kept reminding myself, this is part of racing. I had an issue with a chain that led to me taking off my cassette, that led to me needing a free hub body on Wednesday. I'm leaving on Friday. I don't like doing bike work. And shout out to Rhodey's Bike here who helped me out with this. Like, that's beyond my capacity of feeling comfortable. I don't even have another free hub body here. So I drop the bike off. I get it back. I didn't feel great on Wednesday, but I knew that was because I lifted heavy on Tuesday, because lifting heavy on Tuesday helps me ride really well on the weekends. But even when Wednesday came, I'm like, man, I feel kind of tired. My legs don't feel that great. And I said, hey, you knew you weren't going to feel like 100%. You lifted yesterday and you lifted heavy. And now this bike needs work. It was just sort of like a frustrating start to the week. And then Thursday, I knew I was going to be off because my husband, Chris, was having heart surgery. He had to go in for a cath procedure where they go and they look at everything. So I'm in Winston-Salem all day on Thursday, and then was going to leave early Friday. Well, Friday comes and we were missing some information from what happened on Thursday. So we're trying to piece together the next week's schedule, because the game plan was do the crit in Augusta and then drive to Winston-Salem that night. And then the heart surgery was on Monday morning. Well, now I'm like waiting here. I'm going to go ride here. The quote unquote perfect game plan is not unfolding. And it was really helpful to just think, that's okay. This is what Stephen Bassett said. Like, everything's not going to be perfect. The run up is not always perfect. If you want to be a champion, if you want to win, figure it out. That's what we always used to say in EVOQ Bike the first year. Just figure it out, right? There's going to be hurdles within this little micro time period, and control what you can control. Know it's not going to be perfect and move on. I think one of the biggest things the day before or the week of, I was on a ride and I started doing my visualization, and I start to think of myself crossing the finish line in first place. Because when I look at the pre-reg list for this race, there are so many fast people. Jaden Yeager, Owen Schott, Matt Winstead. Those are the names that initially jump out to me. I'm like, dang, there's some fast people. Donald's there. I didn't even know the guy who won the road race. There's just people, you're not going to know everybody, right? But you need to be able to, or I should say we need to be able to, visualize the finish line and start thinking about yourself as a winner, because it feels a little weird to do. I even look around, like, make sure nobody sees me doing this. It's going to look awkward. Go out, ride, put your arms out. Like, think of winning. If you cannot convince yourself before the race that you have a shot of winning, I truly do not believe when things get crazy, you're going to be able to stick with it and win. And I lost focus in the road race. And so, let's jump to that. There's not a ton to talk about. Heat was mega. It feels like temp 110, I want to say, maybe a little over. Actual temp 99, 100. We're in Georgia. It's super humid. 2 bottles an hour. Make sure you have the right sodium. Make sure you're getting ice socks. Your matchbook is going to be cut in half easily. The power numbers look like it's a race at altitude sometimes. There was a couple watt bombs that got dropped. There were about 3 of them throughout the race that were, if you use WKO, DFRC was depleted or close to it. And here was a really interesting thing that happened that I thought with this group of just so many rippers, either things get crazy in the heat and something goes up the road later, or it goes to the finish at the end, which I felt prepared for going into it. That changed. Interesting thing. And it's like, you always need to be analyzing and thinking throughout the race. On the first lap, 5 guys go up the road and get 3.5 minutes on us. And I'm like, whoa, that's not good. But the second, or like the last quarter of the course, is extremely fast. That it went up to 3.5 minutes. Within half of a lap, it came down 2 minutes to 1.5 minutes. So I'm thinking, okay, for something to stick here today, it's going to have to be a big group, 10 guys, 15 guys. I don't even think 5 of the strongest guys could stay away because the heat was so bad. If you're taking repeated pulls at threshold plus, you're going to waste so much energy. That's what I did in 2017 when Owen Schott, me and Donald met in 2018. When Owen Schott beat me, because I, like a dummy, went off way too early. When him and JJ bridged to me, I was kind of smoked on the last lap, and I had like threshold efforts on the climb, and Owen won. And yeah, I learned a lot, and I applied that to the next year when I won. I conserved a ton. So conservation on this course is a very good thing, and I knew that, and I tried to be conservative, but after 6 guys got up the road. There's also this thing on my shoulder saying, you got to be out. You got to be opportunistic also. And there was one point when there's these rollers on, and they're I would call them hard rollers. I don't even know how to describe these things. You got to be on this course. They're maybe like 60-second efforts full gas, and then it gets really fast because it's like just a long enough hill. And I even said to Owen, I think it's gonna shred soon, because people just started throwing some attacks, and it didn't. So after that all happened and it settled down, I'm thinking this is definitely coming to a big group at the end. And at the finish, as we're going in, the lap before, I started to feel a little twinge in my hamstring. I'm like, no way am I cramping. I mean, this race is 2.5 hours. The heat got me. And I could start to feel it even more on the last lap. And as we're coming in, it like kind of starts to not fully cramp, but you're going into cramp mode basically. So I'm sitting behind Matt Winstead. I feel like I'm in a really good position. Here's where I screwed up. A rider comes up the right side at the very bottom and just comes screaming into the hill. And I look over and I'm thinking, or I shouldn't even say I'm thinking, the thoughts come into my head, what if a group of 10 people come and just flood him, and then the guys in front of me move over, I could get boxed in. This is all happening in milliseconds. I chased after him, and as I did that, my quad and hamstring just like tighten up, and I'm like, uh-oh. And so I thought, well, if I sit down right now, this might lead to full cramp, so I'm just gassing it. Sometimes that works, sometimes that doesn't work. I hit the gas and just body went into cramp, and I was like, oh man. And it started to, I sat down and I start to swing to the left. I'm looking back and just like the group is now, this is like got everyone in motion. I go to stand up and I'm like, oop, that doesn't feel good. I sit back down. About 10 guys come past me and I see Matt Winstead take off, and I'm just like, that. This is the race. What it is. So, hey, sometimes bad things happen. I actually was able to keep pedaling, thank God. But yeah, to put it into perspective, the watts I did at the finish there, 2 minutes at 470, just that's not going to win the bike race. And the guy who won, what I'd heard afterwards, he was just saying, hey, his 1 minute power is kind of his jam. He tried one move, one bridge in the middle of the race, decided it was going to come to a group and just saved it. And so that's kind of what I tried to do the year I won. I didn't fully do that this year. And again, these comments, even if I had changed what I did, I'm not saying I would have won. I came in 12th. I don't want to take anything away from the 11 people that finished ahead of me. I'm just saying suggestions that would maybe change, because I'm sure you find it annoying too when someone's like, oh, well, if I would have changed X, Y, and Z, I would have gotten the podium. It's like, dude, there's something that we all want to change about the race. We didn't do it. So just didn't have it that day. What I more look back on is there a way that I could have reduced the cramping? I live in the mountains here. I've been wearing a sweatshirt at night. That's probably not the best environment of training for if you're going to race in 110 degree weather. When I realized there was going to be this heat wave in Augusta, I didn't take the time in the 2 weeks before to go to a hotter place and train and put out hard efforts. For me, I don't think it was an electrolyte thing. Smashing when you're going really hard and it's really hot and I hadn't done it in a while, my body does not do well. It was really hot at Dirty Kitten, and I did 5.5 hour gravel race. A lot of hammering, was fine. I had been racing in heat before that. I don't know. It's just gotten cool here. And so I think next year I would need to alter my environment more, go down off the mountain, do some hard, long rides in heat. And that's the thing. This is a 2.5 hour race, maybe a 3.5 hour ride. I don't need to go crazy. But yeah, the cramping, try to eliminate that. And then just poor execution. I should not have gone at the bottom with that rider that took the flyer. And, to be honest with you, thinking back, I was kind of waiting for the group to go. I don't really know what my plan was going in. And here's the thing that I screwed up. The last 2 times that I'd been on that climb for the finish, it had been a group of 3 to 6 guys. This was a group of 35. the race is going to play out differently. And I didn't think through that well enough. And I think that what my move should have been because of that climb is be in a position, let the early surge go, latch onto that, and then have the brunt to attack the last 45 to 50 seconds. So I think in my head, I just thought that it would be a smaller group. It wasn't. So maybe mentally I wasn't prepared from that. So losing stings, no doubt. It doesn't suck though. It sucks to not execute. I didn't execute properly. I didn't have the right strategy for that moment. And I picked the wrong path in the heat of battle, pun intended. And so that stung way worse. And the reason I'm telling you all the stings is because afterwards, I just kept I'm like, man, how did I screw this up? And granted, the cramping, I wasn't going to win. I wasn't going to have a great placing. I can't put out power when I'm cramping. But I kept thinking about it after the race. And I said, okay, man, you've had your 5 minutes to be poo-poo about this. What are you going to do about it, right? And I needed to look back, and maybe my saving grace in that moment was thinking to myself, I went back and looked at the files of when I won. And it was even when I was with Owen and came in third. We went hard at the base. It settled in for a second, and then we went hard at the finish. So maybe that is the move. Maybe I should have gone hard and chased that guy, let it settle in, and then I would have loved to known what I had on that climb after I'm moving to the left and go again, which is when Matt Winstead went. And even though he didn't get the win, the guy who won was right behind him. So I don't have the answer. Because of cramping, it has now made me wonder, should I gas it, let it settle, and gas again? So I'm looking back at this file. I'm like, well, when I went really hard in the time I won, I did like 1,100 watts and came down. This time I only did 800 because I went to chase him and cramped. So I was left with all these questions. And I'm not saying this as an excuse. I'm saying to put my mind in where I was at now 4 p.m. and I'm going to get Chipotle and I'm pretty exhausted from the heat. And I said, okay, you know what? You have the data from this race. It did not work out, but guess what? You have a race tomorrow. And what am I going to do about this? The top 5 guys in the road race, they now are at home like, oh man, I did okay. Even if I didn't get the win, I'm coming in strong. They have momentum. Where is my momentum coming from? And this was a shift when I said, okay, I can control my nutrition. I can control my sleep. I can control my mindset. I'm getting on the podium of the crit tomorrow. And it was this just moment that I erased what happened that day. Don't be disappointed. There are races you don't do well at. What are you going to do about it? You got to move on. And I always feel badly for athletes that have a big race in a year, and maybe they only have one big race and they don't do well, and they fall from the sport. Now, I'm not saying that sounds dramatic. It happens though. People have a bad race and they're like, my season's horrible. This was a waste of 9 months. All of my training was a waste. I suck. Da, da, da. No, use this. It stings in the moment, but this is a building block that will take you somewhere as long as you don't crumble. And so where was my momentum? Hey, I've won some crits this year. They were Masters crits. I've done well in some P1-2 crits. I've done well in some gravel races. I've been training. You're ready. Go do this. So in the morning, went through my usual eating oatmeal, had some cereal before I left. The race was not till later, so I'm, kind of spacing my carbs out, leave the hotel, go down, and I got back into my confidence, my self-talk. Hey, this is going to be a really hard race. I was not trying to make it come to a sprint. I did not want to be in a big group at the finish. And so I said, my game plan, and I had more of a game plan for the crit, I think, than the road race. My game plan is there's 55 guys registered, I think 50 on the line. In that ballpark, there's enough fast people that I'm going to go hard, and my race is going to happen in the first 25 minutes. I'm going to be attacking. I'm going to be trying to follow moves. I'm going to be getting into moves. I'm going to be super opportunistic. And if that doesn't work and it comes together and somebody else wins because they conserved, that's okay. I think sometimes that's our battle, right? Do I wait and do I save it for this last move, or do I try and get an early move? And if we don't follow one of those plans. We kind of never do either. And that's when we end up in 12th place. So I started to get, hey, I'm going to envision myself winning today. I know it's going to be hard. And there were two things, pre-race chatter. Shout out to my guy, Scott Rollins from Memphis. He was talking to a few of us, and he said nothing has been getting away today. He goes, I didn't come here for a bunch sprint. You know, in his race, Sharon Smith was there. He's like, so why are people waiting around? You know, Sharon's going to most likely win. But he said no one would let anything go. And so I was talking to two other guys from Memphis, and I said, you know, the funny thing is in this, you know, I feel like there's so many strong people that it's going to be really hard to get away. But yesterday on the first lap, there was a lot of looking around. 5 guys went up the road, and there was a lot of, I'm not going to do it. Why don't you do it? So I thought early something could happen. So we're waiting around, and the weather gets bad, and they delay the race before us for 15 minutes. And I'm like, man, this drive to Winston-Salem is going to be so late. And then I kind of was getting antsy, and I thought, hey, you know, I'm just going to go start my warm-up early. So I got dressed, got ready. Somebody actually said, hey, did you hear about the race is delayed? I'm like, yeah, I'm just going to go cruise around. Rolled around, actually saw Matt Winstead doing the same thing, getting loose, and just kind of, it's not like you're wasting energy if you're pedaling Z1-2. It just kind of took my mind off of waiting around in my car because it was so hot out. I didn't want to be outside and start getting drained. I went back to the car before the race, got my warm-up in, was, you know, drilling some corners, just getting in the flow, and come back, put my third layer of Lactigo on. That stuff is amazing. If you still have not tried Lactigo, you need to get on that train. Use the code Brendan. It gets you, I forget what the discount is, but it's something I use every day. Carnosine is amazing for recovery and for buffering all the hydrogen ions when you're going really hard and producing power through glycolysis. That's all I'll say on that. The race, it was weird. They called up everybody. It was like this was a cross race. They're doing call-ups. So I'm in third row, let's say. Not too worried about it. There's plenty of room to move up on the side. The race starts. We go around the first corner, and it's boom, boom. And I hit this huge pothole. And I was like, oh, hell no. I am getting closer to the front. There just was no time after this is after the first corner. So I hit the gas to fly up the side. It was a long stretch. I didn't have to I wasn't going full gas, but I come up to move up, and I'm noticing that the group is going pretty darn slow. And so I go flying past this guy, and I look back. Nobody comes with me. I mean, it's the first lap. And so I thought, I'm going to take a lap of this course and just see at speed what are the good lines, because we didn't get to take a lap beforehand, and I hadn't been on this course in, I don't know, a few years. And so people had made comments of, hey, there's this ledge on before corner 3. Don't hit that. There's a pothole right in the perfect line after the last corner. So I come around, and all of a sudden I know that a guy from Cura Racing bridges up to me. And so we're kind of rolling together, and I'm starting to hit the gas. We're hitting these straightaways, and I'm like, well, I'm going to motor with this dude for a minute and just see. I'm not going to, this is that opportunity thing that I said. We start hitting the gas, and eventually he's not really pulling through at all. So I'm like, well, I'm just going to keep riding. Let's just see what happens. Not going to if the group comes up, I'm not going to be toasted from doing this. Well, Michael Zinkin rolls up, and I'm thinking, okay. And Zinkin starts pulling. So we get in a groove here, and we have 30 seconds in no time. And I'm like, well, let's roll. Let's just see what happens. Maybe a group's going to bridge up, or what happened in the road race, people are going to look around at each other. When we get going, and I'm not going to go through the power file too much. For the race, 53 minutes, we ended up averaging 379, 392 normalized. That's right around my threshold right now, which is something else I would say. My threshold in WKO has been about 20, it's usually about 410. It's been about 20 watts lower for the past couple months, but I've been racing well. And my FRC is up a little bit higher. So whatever it was, I've gone on some climbs and tried to crush a 20-minute test. And I just sort of peter out 12 to 15 minutes in based on my pacing. I add that in because don't race for the metrics. Who cares? That's not even a 20-minute effort is not what my racing is. And it definitely was psyching me out a little bit, but this is where it helps to have a coach or a training buddy to talk through this thing. It's like, just because the algorithm is telling me, hey man, you're 20 watts weaker, you're not. And there's just something in my body right now that I can smash. I just don't have that sustained holding power, but I don't know. I don't really care, right? Like, how are you riding in groups? How are you racing? How are your races going that lead up to this event? So don't overthink that. But really, when I look at the race, if you look at histogram of watts, it's a huge clump from 390 up to 500. So we were basically doing some gnarly over-unders, which I would say actually ended up being an interesting workout that I might do for a crit, is a 45-second over and a 30-second under. Because on this course, it's a long rectangle. So it's good for me because if it's really tight and you're never able to really like open up the throttle and go, I don't do as well on those courses. But on this one, you could really gas it. And there were a couple laps where I just pulled the whole lap and just did 500 watts and was just like, let's go. And then Zingen would get on the front and I was like, catching back onto him was a little bit tough. And we ended up attacking the guy from Cura because this strategy, you could definitely call into question because he had teammates behind. So it's like, well, why don't you want to bring this guy with you for as long as possible? We attacked him probably 15 minutes in because it was just slowing things down. And I knew we needed to be fast. We averaged over 27, the two of us. And so 27.5 actually. So you could say, well, if you drop him, now his team's going to start chasing. The other thing I'd been thinking of beforehand, there's so many strong individuals, and then there are a few teams. The individuals are going to be looking at the teams. The teams are going to be looking back at the individuals saying, well, we're not going to do all the work for you because you're really fast. Like a lot of the favorites were just solo one-man riders. So there's going to be this like sociology that clashes. I personally did not see the 2 or 3 bigger teams all working together because then you sometimes have a team pull and the other team doesn't take over. And it sounds like that's what happened behind. Owens is like, dude, we were going fast, but then we would get close and a couple guys would attack and then people would sit up and then you guys would get 10 more seconds. And whenever the gap started coming down is when I started laying on the gas. You know, I'm okay with people getting within 20 seconds. You always have to have that throttling push though to drive your little group farther down the road. But when to ditch people, when did I attack Michael with 4 to go? I want a little safety net because what if I attack with 2 to go and he stays on my wheel and maybe counterattacks me and gets to the line? Or I always think it's important. You want to be able to get away and know your way, or you're also testing the waters. Like, hey, can I not get away from this guy? Is it coming to a sprint? You almost get to practice the finish before the finish. It's dicey because if the group was closer and you start screwing around with each other, then maybe the group catches you. You need to think of that. But went with 4 to go. With 2 to go, I hit the lip on the third corner, like of all times, and my wheel skidded out. And I was like, oh my God, dude, if you crash right now by yourself, or what if you do something, you flat, that would be terrible. And so Zinken actually closed the gap at this point. But as I said, I still had that throttle to put down. I hit it on the back stretch the next lap, got away. And kudos to Zinken, man. He did not give up. He did not get caught. He got second. I used to coach Michael. Super dude, has continually been getting faster and just loved riding the brake with him. We rode really well together. So the breakdown was, if you use classic levels, 15% threshold, 20% VO2 max, 23% anaerobic capacity. So 42% was zone 5 and 6. And really, if you broke this down, looking at FTP-FRC, it was, when we look at eye levels, 40% of that. Whereas what I'm saying is if you use different crits, you're going to probably see a lot more FRC. And that's why there's this discrepancy. Classic levels, 20% VO2 max, 22% AC, but it's 42% FTP FRC because they have that 120. The watt breakdown is different. FTP to FRC is 410 to 610 watts. And it's that 610 plus that I think you want to break out. There are no quantum leaps in endurance sports, or any sport really. Don't have one bad race and give up. I think that's just a sign of personal weakness, or maybe you're entitled. And I don't want to say you, it sounds like harsh saying that, but in this, I say this too often, but I just think it's true. There's a lot of people that feel like they've trained for 2 years and they deserve everything. There's a great Drake line. What is it? Oh God, it's something about you can train a lot. Everyone doesn't get a ring though. And that's what I kept reminding myself on Saturday when I got 12th. It's like, hey, I trained really hard for that race. Didn't get any result. But guess what? Everyone else trained really hard. The guys who beat me, they trained really hard. There were people behind me that trained really hard. You can play your heart out. Everyone don't get a ring though. That's what it is. And I know that some people are going to hate to hear that, but I hope that resonates with some 20-year-old who's like, oh man, I'm supposed to feel badly after losing, but this is part of the process. And the answer is to keep going, to keep grinding. And now I'm super motivated for next year. I had a really rocky start to the year and talked about that enough in other videos. But it's like, how do you course correct? And I started course correcting in June to then get a result in August that has now created more momentum to go down the road. And I'm so excited for next year. So 2023 was kind of like not a building block, but a leapfrog to something else. And there's just some cool things that have already come across my radar that I'm looking forward to. And I just want to say that to hopefully motivate you that if you didn't have the season you wanted, there is always next year. And that should have you so hungry and so motivated to put your plan. If you're not thinking of your off season now, I'm starting to have these conversations with all my athletes and with my own coach. What are we doing next year? What do you want to accomplish? What races are already starting to like maybe peak out? And if you're new, you might be thinking, hey, I'm only doing the local scene. Cool. Start to pick out what race you do well at. How can you get on the podium? What race do you get on the podium? How can you get the W? Who's your biggest competition? Who are you chasing to try and be better at, and how do you beat them? I don't have crazy watts per kg. I don't have a lot of things in cycling, but what I feel like I can do well at is what are my skills and how do I apply them to the races that are coming up that I want to do well at? And I just think, it's sometimes detached. The metrics are super important, but start to think more in like a SWOT if you're a business. What are your strengths? What are your weaknesses? What are the opportunities? And what are the threats? You might work your butt off, but if there's this other racer who's better than you at that, they might beat you 9 out of 10 times. So, okay, wait, what's their weakness? How do you start attacking them, right? This is strategy. This is not just go in, increase your FTP, and get dubs. It doesn't work that way. And if we want it to work that way, we're in the wrong sport, that's for sure. So, man, this video was long, but it was fun to talk about the race, kind of recap things. Hopefully you got something from this. And best of luck with your training. If you're listening still, please leave us a 5-star review. Please follow on Spotify. Subscribe on YouTube, and good luck with your training. See ya.